I'd like to offer a quick warning to anybody wearing headphones, earphones, or otherwise not ready for loud noises. Okay, you good? Ready? Then let's freaking go! Wow! Let's go Kraken! Let's go Kraken! I mean, can you even believe it? Let's go! The team that nobody thought would even sniff the playoffs in the preseason, and then once they made the playoffs, nobody expected to get even past 5 games against the defending champs. Here they are in 7, moving on to the second round. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken defeat the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games, winning 3 of 4 in Colorado to take the series and go on to face the Dallas Stars. In so doing, once again, not only proving everybody wrong, which they've made a habit of doing over the course of this season, but they become the first franchise ever in NHL history to have their first playoff series be a win against the defending champions, which is maybe a bit of an obscure stat. There's only been 3 other teams that faced the defending champs in their first series, but the Kraken are the first to win it. And even on top of that, I don't know if you could have picked a better way for them to win Game 7, as it's won, as pretty much this whole series has been, by the ex-Av himself in Philipp Grubauer. Once again, just like this team, proving everybody wrong after a tough first season and then a up and down second season for him. But he absolutely showed up when the team needed him most and is not only the reason they got this to 7 games, but absolutely the number one reason they win Game 7. Of course, the Kraken do have a couple other ex-Avs also on payroll in Donskoy, who unfortunately hasn't been able to play at all this season because of a concussion that might end his career, and Andrei Burakovsky, who, well, the Kraken are now still alive and potentially being able to get him back, although it still probably won't happen for another round or 2. Again, would it have been nice for the Kraken to win the series in 6 and do it at home? Yeah, it definitely would have been, but this whole season it's been road sweet road for the Kraken, so it seemed almost fitting with how the regular season went and even how this playoff series had gone that if they were going to win it, they would do it on the road, and that had to happen in Game 7. Besides, at the end of the day, who cares where they won it? Because they freaking won it! Plus, for what it's worth, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a quick brag for a second, although in the preview and throughout this, I've been honest that I did, going into the series, if I had to bet on it, probably thought the Avalanche were going to win it in 6. When it came to filling out my bracket for the NHL.com bracket challenge, I did end up going with a mixture of what I thought would happen and what I wanted to happen. And as far as that goes, the bracket that I went with, well, other than Florida blowing up the east side, with I think that being the case for just about everybody, otherwise, if New York can win tomorrow in Game 7 of that series, I'll have gotten every one of the other 7 series perfect down to the number of games, which includes the Kraken winning in 7. Now that having been said, I do have the Kraken losing to Dallas in the second round, so hopefully I'm just, really good at predicting the first round and it completely falls apart the second round, but we can handle that starting on Tuesday. Speaking of which, real quick, we will be streaming for that game on Tuesday against Dallas in Game 1 of the second round, just as we were for this game against the Avalanche in Game 7, which was the biggest stream on this channel since the first entry draft for the Kraken when they picked Matty Beniers second overall, so big thank you to everyone that joined. And if that stream was your first time at the channel, as it seems to have been for a number of people, welcome in and welcome on to this wild ride of the Kraken in their first playoff appearance, already headed to the second round. Which I know I've already said a couple of times and is blatantly obvious, but I'll probably say it a few more times, and honestly, can you really blame me? It's just that kind of night. So we might as well get to the game itself, although actually real quick before we do, there is one change in the lineup between the two teams, that being for the Avalanche, as they're missing Cogliano they would have been missing him for the rest of the playoffs even if they had won this game. As it turns out, even though he did return to Game 6 after taking that terrible hit from Eberle along the boards, he ended up having a fracture in his neck after it got x-rayed, so obviously he's not going to return for the rest of these playoffs, and hopefully a quick recovery for him. And as far as that's concerned, well, for one, again, like I said in the Game 6 video, I do think that it's obvious Eberle should have received a 5-minute major, at least if nothing else, to have it reviewed, but it probably should have stayed a 5-minute major, and honestly, I do kind of feel like this hit was worthy of a suspension. Probably just 1 game. I think the fact that the puck was actually a part of this play does come into effect, But like I said in that video, probably a big part of the reason he doesn't end up getting suspended is that Cogliano came back into the game. Now, to be clear, I don't think that that should factor in whatsoever into the decision making of the Department of Player Safety, but like every fan knows, when it comes to these type of hits and whether or not they're reviewed, and even beyond whether or not there's actual punishment given, it's pretty much a spin of the wheel or roll of the dice, random number generator, what have you. We just don't know what to expect from them, and from the NHL, they need to figure out something to actually protect these players, because while I don't think either Makar or Eberle meant to injure, both of them do not have a track record of that whatsoever, which also would have played a role. Again, probably shouldn't, but it does. They are terrible decisions that lead to terrible hits, and both led to bad injuries. And sure, we're at a point now with concussions where the right thing happened with McCann, that he was taken out, examined, and obviously is now still in concussion protocol. Meanwhile, with Cogliano, well, he must not have had a concussion. I would imagine they still checked him out for it, but he still returned to play and played the entire third period with a fractured neck, which fortunately wasn't made worse by any further hits as far as we know, but that definitely could have gotten a whole lot worse. And it really raises the question, how do you protect these players from, I mean, obviously it's a playoff game. He's going to come back if he can and is allowed to. So how do you, as a league, protect players from getting into these dangerous situations with injuries that they don't fully even know what's going on at the time? Anyway, I think it's pretty clear in hindsight that Cogliano should not have been allowed to return to Game 6. And to be honest, even though, again, I don't think it should factor in whatsoever, had he not returned, Eberle probably does end up getting at least 1 game suspension. Regardless of how he got here, though, when it comes to game time, Eberle is in the lineup for the Kraken, and definitely heard it from the crowd, just as the Seattle crowd has been giving it to Makar post the McCann injury. Eberle hearing it every time he touched the puck, which, I mean, honestly, I'd be disappointed in Avalanche fans if they weren't sticking up for him in the same way that Kraken fans did for Makar. It's just what you do as a fan to support your team, especially after a bad hit. Even if, again, it was an accidental one, it was still absolutely a terrible decision and led to a dangerous play that injured a player, which in Eberle's case actually even happens against a guy that he used to be teammates with. That aside, though, when it comes to the game itself, for the Kraken, this entire series, their success has really been built off of fast starts and dominating play in the first period. Now that did kind of get turned around, well, not really turned around, but evened up by the Avalanche in Game 6, as the Avalanche came in clearly showing that they weren't ready to go quietly into the night and let Seattle win this series at home. Now, that was still a pretty even first period, all things considered, but this first period, well, that was just definitely not the case, as although the first 5 minutes are pretty back and forth, both teams getting chances, really from that 5-minute mark on for the last 15 minutes of this first period, it's all Avalanche. And I mean all Avalanche, as they end up outshooting the Kraken in the period 16-6. And honestly, it wasn't even that close, especially when you look at just shot attempts, where, I mean, really the reason that the Kraken managed to escape this first period with the score still 0-0 is, one, obviously the outstanding standing on his head play of Philipp Grubauer, who in the back half of this first period absolutely robs Nathan MacKinnon off of a quick passing play that finds MacKinnon wide open in the slot right between the faceoff dots. He fires off that shot, but Grubauer reacts not just in time to get back out in front of the net to make the save on this shot, but also to control the rebound out to the far side away from any danger of a follow-up opportunity, something that when he did give up rebounds, which he was doing a pretty good job of preventing, he was fantastic at controlling them this entire game and preventing any of those rebound chances. And it's because of that play from Grubauer, this save in particular, as well as fantastic defense from the Kraken. Not so much in the neutral zone and preventing the Avalanche from getting into the Kraken end, but once in that end, limiting pretty much all of the shots aside from really that one from MacKinnon to the outside, and any that did come from up close, the Kraken were getting out in front of so that Grubauer didn't have to make those saves. Doing at least as good of a job of blocking shots as I've seen them do all season, if not better in this first period. So once again, mercifully, thanks to the bend but don't break defense of the Kraken and the outstanding performance of their goaltender behind them in net, they do miraculously get to the end of one with the score still 0-0 for the only second time in the series, the first one having come in Game 5. The Kraken did have a pretty good second period after that and ended up winning that game, so there's always a chance they can do the same here in Game 7. Now, obviously, you can't rely on defense all night, so the Kraken are going to need a much better second and third period if they want to create that turnaround. Really, the only good attempt that they had in the first period that I can remember is one that Bjorkstrand put off of a post after beating Georgiev glove side, which it turns out might be worth remembering as we get into this second period, because with Bjorkstrand in particular, well, actually, to go back to the beginning of this series, at least for me personally, one of the videos that I watched a number of times to hype myself up for this, I really wasn't expecting to find this, but I ended up randomly coming across a video on Twitter of, and I think it was actually posted to troll or at least remind Bruins fans who coming into the playoffs were convinced they'd already won the Stanley Cup after the regular season that team had had. Funny enough, they, like the Tampa Bay Lightning that this video was about, ended up losing in the first round. But the video was the game-winning goal for the Blue Jackets in Game 4 of that series. And not only game-winning goal, but series-winning goal for the Blue Jackets, as they swept aside the then record-setting regular season Lightning in 4 games to win that franchise's first ever playoff series. And that goal was scored by none other than Oliver Bjorkstrand, and the call, John Forsland. So coming into the series, I figured if the Kraken were going to win this series, it would be only too perfect, especially because unfortunately the ex-Avalanche in Burakovsky wasn't going to play in this series, that if the Kraken were going to win their first playoff series against an opponent nobody expected them to beat, it would be only too perfect if it was once again Bjorkstrand with Forsland on the call. And wouldn't you know it, early on in the second period, the Kraken, who struggled to get pucks to the net in the first, just kind of decide to throw a puck at the net as Bjorkstrand gets it out from the corner, and he's, I think, below the goal line when he just backhand shoves this puck towards the net. Either way, it goes off of Newhook's stick, then bounces over Tanev and out in front of the net, where it takes another fortunate Kraken bounce off of the glove of Ben Myers and over Georgiev into the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead. And honestly, kind of like the geeky goal that got the Kraken on the board in the second period of Game 5, this one I also didn't really know had happened in the moment until Tanev threw his hands up in the air and started celebrating. And I figured, all right, what the heck, I'll trust him, it must be in the back of the net. And sure enough, it was. And although it was originally awarded to Tanev, he was even the one that went to the bench first, as I don't think anybody, including Bjorkstrand or Tanev, had any idea what happened. It does end up going straight from that shot down in the corner of Bjorkstrand, off of the stick of Newhook, over Tanev without him touching it, then off the glove of Myers into the net. And of course, with Bjorkstrand, just like the regular season, he wasn't able to score much early on, even with tons of pressure and chances throughout this series. He gets his first on this fluky goal early on in the second, and he becomes the 15th unique scorer for the Kraken. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. We've already seen the final score. We know that the Avalanche score in this game, so this goal from Bjorkstrand isn't the game or series-winning goal. But a few minutes later, the Kraken, after having actually had some momentum from this fluky goal, really their first true momentum of the game, do eventually have it turned back the other way when the first line of the Avalanche are back out on the ice. Once again, Grubauer comes up with a pretty big save. The puck ends up down along the boards in the corner behind the Kraken net. Gord shoves it up to Tolvanen. Tolvanen somehow manages to get it past Taves, and then it leads to a breakaway for Bjorkstrand. He skates in, and before Makar can get back and get in front of this shot, Bjorkstrand fires off the shot and buries it past over the glove of Georgiev and into the top corner of the net to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead. And Bjorkstrand, just like that, 2 goals, and he becomes the 3rd Kraken player with multiple goals in this series and playoff run. And once again, it's over that glove hand of Georgiev, where the Kraken were just picking on that spot this entire series, and it paid off for them on a number of occasions. Even with Georgiev honestly having had a pretty good series, but he definitely gets out-dueled in that series by Grubauer at the other end. Still, we'll get to that. Right now, it's the Bjorkstrand show, as he has 2 quick ones for the Kraken. They've got a multi-goal lead here in the second after having survived that onslaught of the first. Still though, for the Kraken, even with this 2-goal lead, it comes before even the halfway point of the second period, so this does not feel like it's out of hand by any means. Not only is there more than half of the game left, but we've already seen the Avalanche erase 2-goal deficits in this series. Twice the Kraken have been up 2-0. Both times the Avalanche came back to at least tie it, ended up winning one of those games, game 2. and then the Kraken were forced to win Game 4 at home in overtime. And sure enough, the Avalanche were not interested in going away after these 2 goals by Bjorkstrand, as Grubauer once again is the reason that this stays a 2-0 Kraken lead, getting into the late part of the second period when the Avalanche eventually get the first power play of the game. Although, if I did have to pick one save that I would say was Grubauer's best of this second period, it was probably the big one that he made between the 2 goals of Bjorkstrand, coming off of a dangerous crossing pass up from the top by Makar, down to the low part of the faceoff circle on the far side for MacKinnon, who does handle the puck once, which is maybe why Grubauer has time to react to that pass. Either way, it's a pretty quick shot that MacKinnon gets off, and we've already seen that when he's up in tight like this, he only needs a puck-sized window to put the puck in to score from. So Grubauer, with MacKinnon in open ice near the net, comes up with another fantastic save here, which then ends up leading to that play along the boards that gets Bjorkstrand that breakaway. But as we do get to that power play for the Avalanche here at the end of the second period, where the Kraken lead by 2, which comes off of a tripping call on Dunn, and honestly, they could have called any number of things on Dunn here: interference, tripping, holding, hooking, any of them would have worked. It was absolutely a penalty on Dunn as he was trying to hold someone up along the boards, preventing them from getting a rush chance into the offensive end and getting set up for another, requiring Grubauer to make a big save. Either way, Dunn goes to the box, and I mean, to his credit, he does prevent what could have been a good setup for a goal. And to this point, the Kraken had already killed off 16 of 17 Avalanche power plays throughout this series. So you figure, especially considering this power play is going to span the intermission with 10 seconds of it, so not a ton, but 10 seconds coming to start the third. If the Avalanche aren't able to score, it's maybe not a terrible penalty to take. Unfortunately, though, even though Grubauer had managed to rob MacKinnon already twice in this game, on the power play, MacKinnon was not going to be denied a third time. Once again, it's a crossing pass that finds MacKinnon, this time for a one-timer, right down in that same spot by the bottom of the faceoff circle. He fires off that one-timer, and it goes past Grubauer into the back of the net through a crossing screen of Rantanen, who actually, Rantanen ends up getting credited with this goal as the puck goes through his shorts, or like the wavy part of his shorts behind him as he crosses in front of Grubauer. So I don't even think Rantanen knew that this puck touched him, but it does go off of his shorts and into the net, so he gets credit for it. Either way, it's basically a Nathan MacKinnon goal. For Grubauer, I mean, again, it's the absolute perfect spot between that crossing screen of Rantanen and Grubauer, who was sealing off the rest of the net, that MacKinnon finds here. In fact, he doesn't even get it perfectly through that hole because it did hit part of Rantanen. Either way, it takes what would have been a 2-0 lead for the Kraken going into the third to a 2-1 lead. And yeah, if it wasn't already going to be a nerve-wracking third period, it really is going to be now. That said, the good news for the Kraken is that they are going to go into the third period with a lead. And that's a situation where they've been borderline unbeatable throughout this season. I think the stat was 35-1-3 in the regular season when entering the third with a lead. And in this playoffs, they had not lost a game when entering the third period with a lead. Still, it did not take long into the third for those nerves and fears about this now being just a 1-goal lead for the Kraken coming into the third period after that late second period goal on the power play for the Avalanche to be legitimized, as the Avalanche, a couple minutes in, off of the rush, get into the Kraken end. The pass from low in the faceoff dot comes right out to the top of the slot up by the blue line. It's Nathan MacKinnon with the one-timer. He fires it right down Main Street. And once again, it's a perfect shot, and only MacKinnon could find the back of the net here, especially with a goaltender playing as well as Grubauer was. But he does just that. And just like that, the game is tied with MacKinnon having scored twice. Again, Rantanen technically had the first one, but basically MacKinnon has scored twice. But wait, what's this? The Kraken are challenging the play for offside? Well, I mean, the Avalanche have been going offside throughout this series pretty much nonstop, and the Kraken have already pulled one goal off of the board from an Avalanche offside, so who knows? And the review doesn't take long, as sure enough, it's clear as day that Lehkonen was offside by a couple of feet before the puck crosses the line, and the Kraken, dodge a bullet there and keep the 2-1 lead as the goal of MacKinnon comes off the board. Once again, though, those nerves and fears very much legitimized, as whether or not it was offside, the puck went in the back of the net, and for at least a little bit, we thought the game was tied, and this is still early on in the third. So it is definitely hold on to your butts time for Kraken fans the rest of the way. Now, fortunately for the heart health of Kraken fans everywhere, the Kraken didn't do the defensive first type of thing that we saw them do, well, to be fair, with a 2-goal lead earlier on in this series in the third period. They really continue to play a strong 5-on-5 game and definitely had their chances to make this 3-1. Specifically, once again, Bjorkstrand looking to complete the hat trick as he put one off of a bar later on in this third period, then was absolutely robbed by Georgiev. And I mean, Avalanche fans can complain if they want that Georgiev got outdueled by their old goaltender in Grubauer in this series. Though, to be fair, I really haven't seen that much of complaining about Georgiev because I think Avalanche fans rightly recognize that he honestly played pretty well. It's just that Grubauer was out of his mind in net for the Kraken for most of this series. And in spite of maybe some slow starts to games, especially early on in first periods, he was better the later games got throughout this series and fantastic for them in the third periods of games. Sure enough, once again, that shows up here, absolutely robbing Bjorkstrand of a hat trick on a 3-on-1 chance he had. So the Avalanche kind of put Georgiev up against it, but he still came up with the massive save to prevent it from becoming 3-1 about halfway through the third. And then the Kraken still had more chances in them as the Avalanche were getting their opportunities at the other end later on in this period. In fact, actually, I think it was Lehkonen and Rantanen that had a 2-on-0 chance that Grubauer came up with a save on, or maybe it was that Lehkonen put it wide. Either way, they had a good look there. And then Comfer beat Dunn down off of one that rebounded off the end boards to get a big shot on Grubauer. That one, probably his best save of this third period. But back at the other end for Georgiev, maybe the one mistake he made in this third period was when a puck was kind of slowly coming to the offensive end. He went way out of his net to get to it first, eventually realizing he wasn't going to get to it first, so he dives at it in desperation and does actually get to it, which breaks up the play. Still, the Kraken look like they're going to get a handle on it and have a chance at the empty net. And of course, it's Bjorkstrand once again who is looking like he's going to have that chance, but he just cannot get the bouncing puck to settle for him before Georgiev can get back in net. So a third bullet dodge there for the Avalanche, preventing Bjorkstrand from getting that playoff hat trick, even on top of the one in the first period that Bjorkstrand put off of that post. So now it's 2 posts, a robbery, and a bouncing puck preventing him from an empty net chance, which, as we eventually get into the final couple of minutes of this period, eventually, and it does take a while, because of a couple of icings and an offside, the Avalanche eventually, with about 2 minutes left, are able to get Georgiev pulled for the 6-on-5, and the Kraken, once again, fantastic defensive play here, keeping everything to the outside. In fact, I think Grubauer may have only faced one more shot in this game through the 6-on-5. Once again, Bjorkstrand almost has a chance at the empty net, but the puck just gets away from him, enough to the point where he has no choice but to dive at it, whacking it deeper into the Avalanche end of the ice. Well, it's not on goal and they're going to get to it. It kills off precious seconds, and finally, with those last few seconds ticking off, well, I'll go to the live reaction. Rantanen cheats it a bit, wins the face-off. Makar, out to the side, shot, goes wide. Out in the corner, Larson fighting for it. Keep it along the boards, keep it along the boards. Under 30, back for Makar. Makar, down to the corner, it's McKinnon with it. Circling around, he's looking for a pass. He isn't able to find one, Gord hounding him. Out to Bjorkstrand! Oh no! Oh, Bjorkstrand couldn't keep his feet. He goes off for a change, 10 seconds left. He couldn't find the empty net. Fed in. Lehkonen puts it in behind the net. 4 seconds left. 2 seconds left. 1! The Kraken win! 2-1! The Kraken move on to face the Dallas Stars in the second round. They win Game 7 and take the series 4-3, defeating the defending champs. Let's go! Woo! Oh my goodness. Philipp Grubauer robs his old team and the Avalanche of a Game 7 win, saving 33 of 34 and some massive saves in the first period especially. I honestly still hardly can even believe it. The Kraken are going to the second round to face the Dallas Stars for what? And I'll get into it with a series preview video that I'll hopefully get out at least a few hours before Game 1 on Tuesday, which again I'll be streaming for. I do feel like the Kraken matched up better against this Avalanche team, even with them being the defending champs and the division winners of the Central. I feel like that was a better matchup than this matchup coming up against the Stars. I'm pretty nervous about how it's going to go. Either way, the Kraken have now won a series, and what a series it was. Oh, man, I honestly, like, I don't even know what to say more at this point that I already haven't said. Obviously, just an incredible night. To go to 7, the nerves of Game 7, and not just any Game 7, but one that the Kraken win by 1 goal, and it comes down to the play of Philipp Grubauer, who has gone through it as far as the attention he's gotten negatively from the national media and even people within the Kraken fan base throughout what was a pretty lackluster first season from the team as a whole. But Grubauer really got too much of the heat for that, I thought. And still, this season, even through some good games, every now and then he would have that one bad one that you just kind of felt like he wasn't going to be able to come into the clutch for the Kraken, at least not frequently enough and not consistently enough. But just like this team, and I said it before, he continued to prove people wrong game in, game out in this series. And Game 7 was easily his biggest, in the end saving 33 of 34, and among them some very big ones, even outside of the 3 that we specifically pointed out. And all of that through the fact that even though we talked about the keys for the Kraken in this game were going to be shutting down that first line, limiting shots on goal, where even though they had been the second best team all season at limiting shots on goal, this series they just let shots through to Grubauer, or I shouldn't even say let shots through, as once again they blocked a lot of shots in this game, but still 34 more shots on goal in this game. In fact, I think the Avalanche were only limited to less than 30 shots, maybe twice in this series, 2 out of 7 games, less than 30 shots from a team that was averaging, I think it was like 25 shots allowed per game over the course of the regular season. Grubauer was facing it in this series and stood on his head against his old team, robbing them not just in this game, but in this series of moving on to defend their title from last year. And of course, it wasn't just the shots on goal, but also the fact that the Kraken, once again, against what was one of the worst teams in the NHL in the regular season, just like the Kraken at winning faceoffs, they got handily beat in the faceoff circle, which, again, I'll talk more about the series in the preview, is going to be a big problem against Dallas, who was not just one of the best, but the best team at winning faceoffs over the course of the regular season. So yeah, that's going to be a tough part of that matchup coming up. Either way, the Kraken battled through all of that, shot blocking like crazy in this game. Anything that did get through, Grubauer was stopping, other than, you know, the one that goes off of Rantanen's butt. But still, a fantastic game for the Kraken. They overcome everything, all of the doubters. Honestly, I got to fess up to it, even myself included. I picked them to finish the season 7th in the Pacific, and again, if I had to bet on it, would have picked the Avs to win this series. They proved me and everyone else wrong. I, for one, could not be happier to be wrong over and over again when it comes to this team and the success that they've been able to find this season. Of course, a lot of that success coming on the road. Once again, they'll be the road team against Dallas in that series, winning 3 of the 4 games in Colorado and 3 of their 4 wins on the road in this series. And as a whole, regular season and postseason, I said this on Twitter after the game, the Kraken played the defending champs 6 times in Colorado and won 5 of them, including both in the regular season. And for what it's worth, the Kraken only played in Dallas once, and they won that one as well. Speaking of which, I still have to get this video edited and finished, and then prep, record, and finish that series preview of the Dallas series before that game starts and that stream starts on Tuesday. So we'll start to close things out here. And I'm going to close things out not just with the 3 Kraken stars of this game, but the 3 Kraken stars of the series. First, the 3 stars of this game. The first one I think is pretty obvious, though honestly, it's really the first 2 that are obvious, and I could see the argument for either one. But I'm going with Grubauer for the first star. Even with how great Bjorkstrand was in this game, the Kraken absolutely do not win it if it isn't for how fantastic Grubauer was. Even with a great series through all 7 games for him, this one was his best, and the Kraken needed it in Game 7. They got it and win it because of Grubauer. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ice, it's Oliver Bjorkstrand doing the heavy lifting there, not just with the 2 goals, but he could have had 5, 6, even maybe goals in this game. Again, 2 off of the crossbar, getting robbed by Georgiev, and then a couple of chances at an empty net, even if neither one of those quite settled down for him enough to actually get a shot off. Third star, I'm going with Yanni Gourde. He has assists on both Bjorkstrand goals, but that line in general, I mean, I hate to leave out Tolvanen, but that line, when it comes to one line for the Kraken that showed up most in the series, it's hard not to pick the second line, and offensively, it absolutely was the second line, that Wemberg line with Schwartz and Geekie. But this third line still produced offensively in spurts here and there, obviously here in the game with the 2 for Bjorkstrand, but they were also the line that was drawing the vast majority of those defensive shifts against the MacKinnon line. And if it isn't for their ability to, for the most part, hold back that MacKinnon line, with really the only times they had big issues with that being in games 3 and game 6. Again, the Kraken don't win this series. They probably don't even get to game 7 if it isn't for the efforts of that third line with Gourde, Bjorkstrand, and Tolvanen. So when it comes to the series as a whole, once again, the first star obviously has to be Philipp Grubauer. We've mentioned a number of times that the Kraken, just like with the third line, don't get to 7 games. Heck, I don't even know if they get to 6 games without how well Grubauer played in this series. Might have still gotten to 6 games, but they certainly don't win this series or even get to 7 games if it isn't for Grubauer. And they certainly don't come anywhere near winning game 7 if he doesn't have his best game of the series in it. Second star, is a little bit harder, but I think I'm going with Jaden Schwartz. I'm a bit between Schwartz and Geekie here. The advanced stats do point to Geekie as maybe being the best Kraken player on the ice throughout this series, but I think Schwartz stood out a little bit more to me throughout the course of the series. And I mean, I could give the other one the third star, but I feel like I have to give one of those guys on that third line the third star. And if I'm going to give it to one of them, it's got to be Gourde again. He doesn't have the goal production. He did score once, but he doesn't have 2 goals like Schwartz did, or one of his line mates in Bjorkstrand did with 2 goals in this last game. Or again, Geekie has 2 goals in the series. But Gourde, when it comes to shutting down that top line, it was Gourde that stood out the most, as well as on the back end, Borgen, who I thought had a really good couple of games against MacKinnon. The downside being that Borgen also had a couple of tougher games and a couple of the losses. So 3 stars for the series. We got Grubauer, Schwartz, though I can see the argument for Geekie, and Gourde as the third one, though again, you could make an argument for Bjorkstrand or even Tolvanen on that third line. I do feel like at least one of them is deserving, though. And of course, as always, when it comes to that, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. So let me know who your 3 stars of the game are and your 3 stars of this first series. Even how we're feeling going into this matchup against the Stars. Obviously, again, I hope to have another video previewing that series before it starts. And we'll be streaming, like I've said a couple of times, but after how well this stream of Game 7 went, I just want to make sure it's out there that we're streaming once again for the road games in the second round. The Kraken, again, it hardly seems real. They're on to the second round. Still, 12 more wins to reach that mountaintop, but these first 4 have been a lot of fun. Until that round starts on Tuesday, though, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below. Help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless and go Kraken!